Have you ever finished a painting and thought, something is off, but I can't quite put my finger on what? I was editing a thumbnail for a recent video when I looked at one of my paintings next to the reference photo and realized, well, there were some things wrong with it. I know my students experience this feeling all the time when they share their work with me. So today I'm going to walk you through the exact framework that I use to help both my students and myself turn those meh paintings into exactly the style and look we're aiming for. By the end of this video, you'll have a simple system that takes all the guesswork out of critiquing your paintings. No more vague feelings of dissatisfaction, just clear, actionable steps that tell you exactly what to fix and how. And if you stick around to the end, I'll show you just how big of an impact this will make on this painting. All right, so first things first, I always need to see two things before I can go about diagnosing these kinds of issues. Your reference photo or your reference setup if you're working from life, and your inspiration for what you want this painting to actually look like. Without these, a critique becomes way too subjective, and usually when it's subjective, it becomes pretty emotional. So let me show you what I mean. Last month, I had a student who kept telling me that her portrait just didn't feel right. She'd been struggling with it for weeks, and by the time we sat down together, I had her pull up her reference and her style inspiration side by side with her painting. And right away, she realized that her lighting was completely different from what she was actually aiming for. Without those concrete comparison points, she was just going to keep spinning her wheels with this vague feeling of satisfaction. It is so easy to feel underwhelmed on a day when we are stressed or defeated. Ask me how I know, and not be able to pinpoint what the actual problem is. But when you have your reference and inspiration right there, you can typically see what's actually happening in a pretty cut and dry way. So when I look at my painting side by side with my reference and my inspiration, there's actually only so many buckets our critiques can fall into, because we want to keep everything tangible and actionable. So think about it. You wouldn't want to say that your piece is lacking a sense of wonder, because what does that mean? How do you measure wonder? Instead, you might say, okay, the colors are too cool, or I didn't accurately capture the proportions of her eyes. That is much more actionable. It gives you really clear, concrete steps that you need to take to improve the painting. It's the kind of critique where once you state it, you know exactly how to act on it. I think of all my analyses as fitting into one of these 5 simple buckets: drawing issues, value problems, color problems, edge quality. This also relates to brushwork or paint texture. And then finally, composition. Even if there is something emotional or kind of abstract that you feel is missing from the piece, really think about which of these buckets would actually address that gap that you're experiencing. So if you want a sense of space in the painting, well, maybe your composition is too zoomed in. Maybe if you're painting something like a landscape, there isn't enough atmospheric perspective. What is it that can give you that sense of like space, drama, or wonder? And how can you put it into these very concrete buckets? So today, I'm going to be digging into this exact painting that I was talking about in that thumbnail. And in this case, while I do see some drawing issues, I can tell right away that the biggest thing bugging me relates to color. So that's where we're going to focus. Now, when it comes to color, just to give you some context, we have a bit of a double whammy because value is actually a part of color. So first things first, if I'm analyzing this particular piece, I need to ask, is this truly a color problem or is it a value issue? The easiest way for me to test this is to actually put both my painting and my reference into grayscale. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So now that I look at my painting side by side with my reference and inspiration, there's just only so many buckets that my critique can fall into. And we want to keep everything tangible and actionable. So use this as an example. Something like critiquing my piece by saying it's lacking a sense of wonder. Well, what exactly does that mean? What is the recipe for creating wonder? How do you fix a sense of wonder? So instead, I want to take that idea that I might be playing with there and translate it into something that is much more concrete. So does the wonder have to do with her posing or the colors that are being used? Is it that maybe she had an expression of wonder on her face and I simply haven't captured enough of that expression? Those kinds of things are actionable. And this is the kind of critique where once you state it, you should know exactly how to act on it. So I'm going to be thinking about all of my analyses as fitting into one of 5 simple buckets: drawing issues, value problems, color problems, edge control, which also encompasses brushwork and paint texture, as well as composition. So as I take a look at these two side by side, right away what jumps out at me is that there is a drawing difference here. Chances are the perspective I was seeing from life is a little bit different from the perspective that I captured with my camera. Also, what I captured from life is the angle she was able to hold for 3 hours versus the photograph I got was at the very end of this 3-hour session. So her pose is just going to be a little bit different. So I'm not going to sweat the drawing differences too much. What I really need to do after acknowledging that yes, there are some drawing differences is I need to try and pinpoint that thing that made me look at that thumbnail and say, this isn't quite what I was going for. And thankfully, I've done this a whole lot. This is how I analyze any painting I'm working on and say, I just don't think I captured the color that I was interested in. So I'm gonna go ahead and investigate that first because I really don't have any concerns about my composition and I'm not gonna touch the question of edge quality quite yet. And like I already mentioned, we've kind of disqualified any differences in the drawing for right now. When it comes to color, we have a bit of a double whammy because value is actually a part of color. So first things first, I need to ask, is this truly a color issue or is it actually a value issue? So when I take a look at my reference and my painting, the easiest way for me to check this is actually to put them both into grayscale. So I'm going to do that right now. And when I take a look at these side by side, I can see, okay, the values feel pretty close. So this doesn't feel fundamentally like it's a value problem. Like if I look at the base skin tone on her face, it's about the same level of darkness as the base skin tone here. Same thing with the value of the shadow that's under her jaw. And her hair is hitting about the same value notes pretty well. So I can kind of safely say that this doesn't feel like it's fundamentally a value problem, so I can actually dive in and take a look at color. So I'll go ahead and remove that value layer. So here's the next question I need to ask. Do I actually like the color of my reference? A lot of painters get stuck here because they actually don't like the color of their painting, but they don't like the color of their reference either. So they just start inventing colors. And that's where we truly get into a lot of trouble. I once watched a painter spend 3 hours fixing a portrait by making the skin tone warmer and warmer because they thought it looked too pale and sickly. But when we looked at her reference, the model actually had really cool pale skin that was sitting in a cool shadow. And that was the reality they were working from. So by trying to invent a different reality, instead of just working with what they had, they ended up with something that looked like a bad spray tan instead of something believable. So the lesson here is that if you don't like your reference's color, get a different reference. Don't try to paint from imagination when you're learning to see accurately. But in my case, I really do like the color of this reference. So the next step here is to pinpoint where is the issue the greatest. Looking at my painting, I would say it's not something like the hair, but the lips and the surrounding skin tone really jump out at me the most. And if I refer back to my inspiration, I can see that the actual color of her complexion in the reference is really close to this Ruth Fitton style that I'm aiming for. So if I take a look at Ruth's work and I scroll down, right away there's some paintings that really jump out at me. This one especially, but this one really falls into that category as well. It's really beautiful. I'm going to stick with the first one and I just want to hold it side by side with my model here. And right away, I just feel like she did such a beautiful job of capturing a similar skin tone. So if you've been paying close attention, you might have realized that now I have my reference, I have my painting, and I have inspiration to work from. Now it's just a matter of breaking down the differences into as simple terms as possible, which is really the theme of this whole system. How can we take something as nebulous as whether I'm satisfied with this portrait and break it down into just a few simple yes or no questions? So for any color issue, I just ask 3 questions. Is the value too light or dark? And just as a hint, if you're running into value issues, these are the 2 questions you ask about value. Next, going back to color, is the chroma too high or low? So that's the saturation or the intensity of the color. And then finally, does the hue need to shift toward a different color? So is this more of a yellow or more of a green? So let's use the lips as an example. First, is the value of the lips too light or too dark? So again, I'm going to flip this back to value so we can actually compare. Looking at them side by side, especially when looking at the upper lip, I would say the value is indeed too dark. So I know that I need to get this lighter. Next, I will go ahead and remove this value layer, and I will ask, is the chroma too high or too low? I might guess it's a little too high because this color just feels like such an intense red, but it's hard to actually tell exactly because her skin just looks super orange to me instead of pink. And that's telling me that I have a hue issue. I'm seeing this across the board overall in her skin tone, but I'm also seeing this really show up in her lips. So what I'm going to do is to really quickly test this. And then once I see the results of the test, I can actually apply them onto the canvas. I'm going to go ahead and adjust my values first, and then we will take a look at hue and see where that leaves us with chroma. So here I'm just using the dodge tool in Photoshop. Now I am not a Photoshop wizard by any means, but I will absolutely use something that speeds up my painting workflow and gives me just an easier ability to actually tell what needs to happen before I need to apply this onto canvas. So the dodge tool does a couple of things. It will lighten an area, but it'll often also intensify it a little bit. It will actually boost the chroma. So this complicates things a little bit, but I can see right away, just lightening this value makes it feel a little bit better. Now it's definitely too high in chroma, but that's kind of to be expected given that this is how I've done this test. Next, let's go ahead and see if I can't take some of the orange out of this, and then let's see where that leaves us. Now that I have the subject selected, let's go ahead and try taking the orange out of this. I'm just going to use the camera raw filter in Photoshop to help me with this. Now this is going to allow me to potentially change a whole bunch of things at once, but I'm going to try and rein it in. So already I took the temperature away from yellow and a little bit toward blue, which helped. So if I take this edited version and I actually put it side by side with the original, I can actually see pretty clearly that there is a marked difference as soon as I take that orange out. Already, I start to feel like this is a lot more unified with the reference. Looking at this now, I can see that once I shifted the hue away from that orange and more toward a natural pink, and I lightened the value just a little bit in the lips, the chroma actually looks much more appropriate. Sometimes fixing one aspect of color just sort of automatically fixes the others. So taking a look at these, I'm really surprised by the difference. The painting now has that same warmth and natural skin tone as both the reference and the inspiration. So what started as a vague feeling of something is not quite right became a really clear, actionable fix in just a few minutes. This framework works for any painting issue, not just color. The key is having your reference and inspiration close by and keeping your critiques within those 5 tangible buckets. Then, depending on what bucket you're in, you just ask the natural follow-up questions. If it comes to drawing, you simply ask yourself, all right, is this shape a little bit too big or too small? Does it need to move a little up, down, right, left? Does it need to tilt at a certain angle? If the issue is value, you simply ask, is the shape too light or is it too dark? And if it's color, you simply ask, is this chroma too high or too low? Or do I need to adjust the hue toward one color versus another? Now, if you're going into something like edge quality and brushwork or texture, you can simply ask, does this mark need to have a softer edge or a harder edge? And then finally, if it comes down to composition, there are a few questions you can ask here, but essentially you just want to have your reference side by side with your inspiration and start looking for differences between the two. For instance, if I use Ruth's beautiful portrait study here and I want to go in that direction, one obvious difference is that she hasn't actually painted in all of the hair. Her model is also sitting in profile. And she's been lit in a way that really exaggerates the beautiful pinks in her skin tone. All right, I think I got the pinks and the skin tone in this particular reference, but this gives me some clear differences to look for when I'm composing next time. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, I'm not even sure what my goal style looks like, I've got you covered. I've created a free guide that walks you through exactly how to identify and define your artistic voice. I'll link it in the description below. Now let me know in the comments what you think of this framework and definitely share how it has helped you in your painting practice. I love hearing about your progress, and also if there are questions that come up about how to apply this, definitely let me know because your questions always help me to decide what videos to make next. Until next time, I hope that this system helps you to really decode any frustrations you've been running into with your own paintings. This is genuinely exactly what I do every time I get stumped on one of mine. So until next time, happy painting.